Thanks for meeting me.
Listen, thanks for having me out on this gorgeous day.
It's a beautiful day. How do you feel like the vibes are right now? If you could do a vibe check for me.
Vibe check is very good.
It's very good. I would agree.
It is like excellent, okay? It's just so good. I think vibe check is great with the vice president. She is just out there bringing it home every event. Vibe check could not be better with Tim Walz, who's like one of the most fun people in the world.
I was a little anxious about him, but it turned out he was good.
Oh, no, he's great. We did an event with him. The president did an event with him, a bridge that's connecting Wisconsin, Minnesota, critical for infrastructure in the northern parts of those states. And afterwards, we were doing kind of infrastructure remarks in a brewery. I can't even remember the circumstances, but, Waltz is he's somebody who can walk into a bar in the middle of the day with a bunch of union guys, and it doesn't feel like it's forced.
I feel like Democrats are always, the attack is we're like coastal elites, and I think this is the first time where we're kind of owning rural America in a way that I don't think we have previously.
No, I think there's so many exciting things about this ticket. One of them is it's the first time an HBCU graduate.
Yes.
And take a step back and think about that. It is amazing. What is exciting about this ticket is that they so clearly scream forward. They talk about moving forward, not moving, but you look at them, you listen to them, and they're both people who come from relatively modest backgrounds, who kind of get what people are going through in this country, but also have spent their careers really pushing forward. And I think that next week's convention is going to be, I think the vibe check will be very, very high.
I'm very excited. It's my first convention.
Oh, no kidding.
It's my first one. It's the best one. I actually signed up before the switch had happened, and I was very excited to go, but now I'm like even more excited.
It's also, it's the middle of the Midwest. One of the reasons the convention is in Chicago is because of the importance of that blue wall, the blue wall states. But it's going to be a convention that is about a united party that is talking about making people's lives better. And it's striking when you look at the Republican convention that they spend no time talking about making people's lives better.
No, it's all grievances and talking about me, I. There's no we.
No, there's a lot of I in that party.
The reason why I wanted to be here, because George Washington famously stepped aside.
Yes.
After 2 terms.
Right.
And though it's not the same thing Biden did, I think it's very familiar. I think it's really an interesting thing that the best presidents are actually people who can say no to power. And so I think it's a really interesting thing that we have to look for presidents who can do what Biden did.
I think the best presidents are the ones who know why they want to be president and just don't want to be president. And you see that throughout politics. The best candidates are the ones who know why they want to run. I once was working with a candidate who was passionate about gun control because she'd had a member of her family killed. And she was being called a single issue candidate, and that concerned her. And I said, listen, being passionate about one issue is better than being passionate about no issues, right? People know what you stand for. And I think one of the strengths that Joe Biden has is he's always known why he wanted to be president. And it never was about the trappings of the office. He'd been in the Senate for 36 years. He'd been a chairman. He'd been vice president. He's had plenty of trappings over the years. But it was because there were things he felt very strongly he wanted to get done. And I think our greatest presidents were the same way. There were things they knew they wanted to get done.
So it has been not even a month since Biden dropped out of the race. I would like to ask about that because you were so close to it. I guess I want to ask, what happened? What happened? What do you feel like happened?
It's still hard. It's going to take me a while, to be honest, to process this.
I cried on Instagram Live. So, yes, I get it.
It's going to take a long time to process. He has been a great president. He has been a transformational president. I look at small pieces and large pieces of what this administration accomplished, and people are going to feel the effects of this for decades to come, not years to come, not months to come, not days to come. They're going to feel the things that happened here. And so you say to yourself, what happened? And it's going to take a long time for us all, and hopefully some really good historian is going to sit down and really figure it out. But he made the right decision, and he feels he made the right decision. And what was always the single most critical thing to him was beating Donald Trump. It goes back to 2019, why he ran to begin with. No, he wasn't planning to run after he left the White House. He had a pretty good life, but he felt very strongly that he was the best person to go beat Donald Trump and really restore the soul of this nation. And he made the same decision when he decided not to run and to pass that baton to Kamala Harris. And that is a soul of the nation decision that I think we're still all kind of grappling with. How huge that was. You started by talking about giving up power, but not just giving up power, but having put in the pipeline. And to me, this is exciting as a woman who's been in politics a long time and seen the challenges women in politics have. He had put in the pipeline back in 2020, a woman, so that the next time the opportunity opened, nobody would say, is she qualified? She's been vice president for 3.5 years. People aren't worried about whether she's qualified. Nobody would say, can she do the job? There's no question she can do the job. And that's how you make progress. That is how you make progress. And of all the things he may be remembered for and should be remembered for, to me, this is one of the biggest pieces.
What do you think the media got wrong about that moment?
You know, I think that the media just gravitates towards the highest level of conflict so that people who were still supporting Joe Biden weren't as exciting as any random House member who might come out against him. And I thought that the media, the biggest picture they missed coming out of the debate was that the fundamental shape of the race didn't change. You know, people went into the debate knowing that Joe Biden was old. They came out of the debate knowing he was old. They had an opportunity to see Donald Trump unfiltered. And for many people, it was the first time they'd seen that since he was president, because they don't watch his rallies on, you know, whatever, OAN or whatever. I mean, they don't watch Trump rallies. And so they were like, oh my God, I'd forgotten how bad he can be. And I thought that the media totally missed the fact that the contours of the race did not change. They didn't really start changing until, 3 weeks of just unremitting attack on Joe Biden by his own party.
Maybe like if the party had fully rallied.
There are going to be a lot of what ifs in the rest of our lives, but the situation we're in ends up being a very good situation.
I agree.
So, I think I'm a big believer that in politics, you control what you control. You have to accept what you don't control.
I was just talking to a reporter earlier where I tried to explain, because I think people are so shocked that the Harris team, by and large, is a lot of the same staff. They're like, what are they doing differently? Like, they're not doing anything different. It's the same staff, but you guys are seeing it differently, you know?
That's exactly right. We were joking that finally people can admit that the economy is actually pretty darn good in this country. That inflation's coming down, that economic growth continues, that the basic economy in this country is still creating jobs, that people are getting jobs, that they are living their lives, that, for the last 2 holidays, we've had more people traveling than ever before, that over the 4-year period that Joe Biden has been president, that Kamala Harris has been vice president, that this country's made a gigantic amount of progress. And now it's like people have permission to admit it.
I worry the media is falling into the same trap again, because I just saw a poll that 58% of voters think Donald Trump is too old. I think it got to 70 for Biden, maybe a little higher, but there's no stories about that. The story now is that Donald Trump talks to the press and Kamala Harris doesn't. And they're doing the same thing again, where they are creating a narrative on his terms. And I don't know how to get them to stop.
So it's a great point. I think that, the issue with Trump at the end of the day is not that he's too old. The issue with Trump is that he is unfit for office. And I think she's done an excellent job since becoming the Democratic nominee of going out and making that basic case, is that he should not be president. Shouldn't have been president last time, but he sure as heck shouldn't be president this time. As someone who openly talks about discarding the Constitution, ignoring our nation's norms and laws, that someone who is Donald Trump should not be president of the United States. And age maybe plays a role in that, but the problems with him are so much more profound than age. And she, at the end of the day, I think is the single best person to make that case against him, and she's doing it. But the trap that you're talking about, which is the false equivalency trap, well, he has a problem. Therefore, we have to go find a problem with her. I think it's a very real one. The media still doesn't know what to do about Donald Trump after.
But they've had 10 years.
They've had 10 years, but they haven't figured it out. They haven't figured it out. It's tough. Do we show his rallies and then afterwards say, well, everything he said was a lie, but we've given him the airtime? Do we not show him? How does that help? Because at the end of the day, people need to see and hear it, right? So it's difficult. But I do think the false equivalency, if he has a problem, she has to have a problem, is something the Democrats have been living with now since Hillary Clinton.
Is that right?
Yeah. That, you know, I think you talked to veterans of the Clinton campaign, and the defining deviancy down piece for Donald Trump was really powerful way back in 2016. I can tell you from a Biden perspective, you know, we knew that if Joe Biden had gone out and said 1/10 of the things that Donald Trump did on a daily basis, that the headlines and the columns about, you know, how could he say these things? They don't make sense. They're crazy. They're not based on facts, would have been enormous, right? And that it's just baked into how the media cover him. It's like, yes, he lied again, the entire speech.
Well, the thing I don't understand, I don't mean to make this interview a media criticism interview, but the thing I don't understand is, wait, I lost it. Where'd it go? I lost it. It'll come back.
It'll come back. Okay.
Or maybe not.
Yeah.
Now I'm the one with dementia. See how that works? So
you're too old for this podcast.
If I were a Martian and I landed down into D.C., what would you explain to me as senior advisor to the president is? What is that? It's like a big title, but it also is a very abstract one.
It is. I would say a senior advisor to the president is one of the people who are trying to look at the full picture of the government and of the political situation. You know, I'm a big believer in context. You can have the best candidate in the world, best message in the world, but context really matters. I think senior advisors are, at the end of the day, responsible to the president to give their best unvarnished, honest assessment of where things are, to be honest about their recommendations to the president of what they think he or she should do. And then once the president makes a decision, even if you don't agree with it, to go out and give 100% to making sure that it is successfully executed. And it's a big government, and it's a big country, and those are big jobs, but they are extraordinarily fulfilling jobs.
How did you get into this? You know, are your parents in politics?
No. I love American history, and I was interested in politics, and a friend of mine from high school had a summer internship working for the Office of Administration in the White House during the Carter administration, and they didn't have enough people to answer the phones. So he called me, and I was behind the cash register of my summer job, and he called me, and he said, how would you like to answer phones at the White House?
And that's how you got.
I said, I would like to do that. So the next thing I knew, I was in the West Wing of the White House, down the hall from the Oval Office.
Wow.
Answering phones for the White House Chief of Staff.
And that's how you start.
And that's how I got my start.
And then you were there how many years later?
So I was there for a year and a half, and then I worked on the Carter campaign. And then I didn't go back to the White House until 2009 with Barack Obama.
Wow.
So you see the different colored marble?
Yes.
You know the story.
I actually remember there is a story. I forget what the story is.
The story is that they began constructing this, and then during the Civil War, they had to pause construction on it. Okay, so what happened was they got to that point, and then during the Civil War, for a number of reasons that I assume include nobody to do the work, probably access to the marble, for whatever reason, they had to pause it. And then when they finished it, they ended up getting the marble from a different place.
Speaking of the Civil War, the thing that makes me one of the things that makes me most upset about Donald Trump's refusal to accept defeat was that I believe that was the only time the Confederate flag made its way into even near the Capitol, right?
I think that's accurate. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I would have less of an issue of him running again if he would have just said I lost. You know, because that is just so fundamental to what we do here. If we just say, I did the best I could. I wish you success in what you do. And I don't understand why there's just like that whole part of it seems to not even be part of the equation of how we consider his candidacy. He's using the tools of democracy, I believe, to try to dismantle it.
I think that anybody who's watched Donald Trump knows that he has no respect for democracy, that he has no respect for any of the pieces of democracy that have to work together to make this country a functioning democracy. I mean, part of the extraordinary thing about this American experiment in democracy is the part where somebody loses an election and says, okay, I'm now going to yield the most powerful office in the world with the largest armed force in the world. Well, maybe it's not the largest anymore, but certainly a significant armed force with the largest, with this huge government and all of the power that is vested in the president. And I'm just going to turn it over because I lost an election. And it's an extraordinary thing when you think about it. That's not been the history of the world, that people willingly did that. Mm-hmm. And until Donald Trump, no one had ever said, well, no, I actually am not going to do that. And even in recent history, you have both Al Gore and Hillary Clinton, who won the popular vote significantly in this country and lost the Electoral College, and were willing to say, okay, under the rules of democracy, which may not be the most representative in this day and age, I lost. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to say I lost. And Al Gore in particular, who, probably had a pretty good legal case if he'd wanted to continue pursuing it other ways, was willing to say, no, I lost. So it is unprecedented in this nation's history that you have someone who just was unwilling to state what was very obvious. And what he knew, we now know he knew he had lost and that he was a loser. But he doesn't respect any of the rules of democracy.
My worry, though, is that, I don't even think this is a worry. I think this is what it is that he's just a symptom. And I believe we're in a generational fight. This isn't something that's won in an election.
Yes.
He's now created a cancer, in our politics. And I don't know, we can't, the goal can't be to just always win the election. Like, we're eventually going to lose. And I just don't know what guardrails are in place for when someone smarter and a little bit less divisive than Trump gets in there.
Well, also more competent.
Yes.
One of the things about the first Trump administration was when he got to office, not only had he no idea of how to go about this thing, but he had nobody around him who really understood the federal government either. One of my great fears is that he does have people around him now who know exactly what they want to do. And as much as they can pretend that Project 2025 doesn't exist, it does. Mm-hmm. And it's a real thing. And it's people who are putting serious planning. The Trump administration only put that kind of energy into one thing, which was the federal judiciary and the Supreme Court. And they had enormous success at putting judges into place, that are upending decades of jurisprudence. And of course, the Supreme Court now that is not the same Supreme Court that it was in 2020 when a lot of these post-election lawsuits got there. So we should all be very concerned, and you're totally right.
But what's the plan? They had a 30-year, take over the court plan, Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we need a plan tomorrow. I'm not saying you have to know the answer. Yeah. But I'm just I hope there are people out there thinking, there are Democrats out there thinking, we've got to have a 30-year protect democracy plan,
Well, I think that there are definitely Democrats who understand that it's not a question of one election, that this is not something that's ever won, that you have to continually fight this fight all the time. And this idea that somehow the MAGA wing of the Republican Party is just going to go away at some point is crazy, because they tapped into something fundamental. One of the scariest things for me always is looking at the polls and seeing the number of people in this country who just believe these things. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're terrible people.
No. My mom is one of them. She believes the other side.
She believes that Trump had the election stolen from him.
Yes.
Sure. There are a lot of people who feel that way.
Yes.
Yes.
It's very sad. It's sad, and it's actually upsetting that he has fooled a lot of good people.
I think a wonderful post-presidency project for Joe Biden would be to pull together some people to start really thinking through this Project Democracy.
Yes.
He saved the soul of the nation by winning in 2020. Hopefully he is continuing to protect the soul of the nation by the decision he made to step aside and pass that baton to Kamala Harris in 2024. But this battle's not over. It's only just beginning in many respects. And as you said, someone smarter, someone who doesn't come across as equally divisive, and in my mind, someone who's far more competent, would be a huge threat to our democracy.
On November 5th is Election Day. I think that's 80 days, 79 days.
Yeah.
Getting close. What are you going to be thinking at 6 p.m. when the first state's polls close?
Well, if I remember correctly, the first state's polls are what? Kentucky?
Kentucky.
Yeah. I'm going to be like, I'm not surprised. Okay. But
like as the night starts to consume.
Nervous. Yes. Scared as hell.
Okay. Same.
Yeah, scared as hell. Okay. And just knocking on a lot of wood. And my husband's very superstitious. I'm not, but I might adopt some of his superstitions that night.
What's like one superstition?
Well, he is definitely a knock on wood person.
Okay.
Okay. He is definitely like you can't put an umbrella up inside the house to dry out kind of person, which I never even knew that was a thing, but it turns out is a thing. So I'll just ask him for more of his superstitions.
Yes. I don't pray, but I will pray that night.
Yes. So I will be scared. I will be nervous. I'll be watching very carefully, the first of the battleground states that actually count votes quickly. So, we'll have a decent sense. Exit polls don't work, and nobody should ever even look at them. But we'll have a pretty decent sense, from the Midwest, what kind of night we're going to have, I think. So.
All right. Well, I think that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great discussion.
This is great. Yeah. You're my first interview for my YouTube channel, so I appreciate it.
Oh, how exciting is that?
Yeah. Did I do okay?
Yes, you were terrific. Okay. You were terrific.
I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?